Here's the Black liberating truth. Our heroes are dead, and the same group of people that killed them are now writing all of our narratives. They routinely falsely distort our narratives in ways that serve their nefarious hidden agendas against us. They now vilify us to falsely validate their past and present mistreatments of us. It's also how they manufactured societal consent for their mistreatments of us. It's why white cops can routinely murder unarmed, innocent Black people and avoid prosecution by merely saying that they were in fear of losing their lives when they did it. The vilifying propaganda has made our Black skin the weapon, so therefore we're always armed. They also dehumanize us to make others insensitive to our plight. They marginalize us and tell us that all study results favor themselves over us. This subliminally embeds the myth of their racial superiority into our subconscious minds. This makes us much more easier to control because it makes us more compliant with their white dominance over our lives. It's a control system so proficient that in many cases, it causes many of us to even prefer their white dominance over our lives. Because our enemies write all of our narratives, they also therefore literally owns our perception of ourselves. They determined a long time ago that by perpetually negatively distorting what we believe about ourselves, that they could condition us to perceive ourselves through a false, inherent, inferior identity that benefits the white society. Moreover, that they could create Black self-hatred and disunity, which attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. It's our true hidden reality that they fear us ever learning. Welcome to the real world. Presently, white government agents that specializes in psychiatry and propaganda. They work unrelentingly and unrepentantly behind the scenes, manipulating the collective minds of the Black masses to think and behave in ways that are against our own self-interest and that instead serve the interests of their white society. These men govern our minds and shapes our thoughts and our perceptions and our beliefs in ways that serve the system of white supremacy. They analyze and study everything about the Black population, our beliefs, our likes, our dislikes, our strengths, and our vulnerabilities. This surveillance information is gathered and decisions are then made on which fraudulent stories to produce to best create certain psychological feelings among the Black population that assist the white society in maintaining its social dominance and control over the Black population. Their psychological warfare propaganda campaigns are at the root of why many Black people now self-identify as niggers, perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies, and reveres and defends Caucasians in spite of a brutally horrific history of racism, violence, and discrimination against us throughout history. They've shifted Black collective aggressions away from deservingly from being directed against the white society and have undeservedly redirected it against ourselves. They did this by manipulating us to perceive it as ourselves that are our worst enemies. Therefore, instead of unifying ourselves against the white oppressive society, we instead now fight among ourselves. They privately create division and discourse among us and then publicly point to the division and discourse as being proof that we're inherently inferior to them and therefore needs them to govern over our lives. Unlike their past blatant racist subjugation tactics that Black people could easily identify and therefore unify and develop counter strategies against, this modern system is not easily recognized, nor is it easily comprehended by most of its Black victims. Therefore, instead of unifying ourselves, To overcome this modern subjugation system, we instead just keep fighting among ourselves. Our current predicament is like the analogy of ants in a jar, and the person holding the jar periodically shakes the jar, causing the ants to become confused and they start fighting among themselves. Therefore, never focusing their attentions on the person shaking the glass. The white society's racist subjugation of black people always works best when the black victims no longer recognizes how it works. The black liberating truth has finally been told. However, many black people are afraid to accept the truth because of the inherent call for action that comes with doing so. They therefore instead cling to their biblical fairy tales and silly slave syndrome myth that keeps us complacent, mentally enslaved, and keeps our liberation efforts stagnant, thus keeping us functioning as self-enslaving wardens of our own mental prisons. Black people, we must stop being self-serving, self-enslaving wardens of our own mental prisons. The time of believing in things that literally insults our own intelligence has now passed. We have now entered the era of knowing the truth. This is why those of us who know the truth must teach those of us who do not. African proverb. However, before diving more deeper into the truth of our plight and condition, here are two forewarnings. Firstly, I never said that what I teach will be easy for everyone to comprehend. I only said that it will be the black mental liberating truth, the truth that our enemies don't want us to ever learn. Secondly, don't dispute facts you don't understand for lies you've been misled to believe. Doing so will keep you mentally enslaved by the white society. Now let's continue with the truth of our plight and condition. Those white government agents, social scientists, and propaganda designers have mentally enslaved millions of black people by repetitively and constantly feeding false white exalting and black marginalizing propaganda campaigns into our society. It's embedded within the music that we hear, the education we're taught, news reports, and it's even embedded in TV shows and movies that we watch while we think we're just being entertained. They even distort their published maps to make Africa appear 13 times smaller than its true prospective size, while making all white countries appear significantly larger than their true sizes. The repetitive and constant false exaltation of whites and false marginalization of black people is designed to convey the subliminal message that whites are inherently superior to blacks and are therefore supposed to rule over black people. This is not a silly conspiracy theory. The subliminal manipulation of the subconscious minds of large targeted populations through constant and repetitive propaganda is a true social science system that governments have completely mastered. It's called societal social engineering. It's how governments and the ruling class steer society towards their hidden objectives. It's a discipline in social science that refers to the efforts to influence particular attitudes and social behaviors on a large scale in order to produce desired characteristics within a targeted population. Therefore, as a means of maintaining white social dominance over black people, the narratives that are repetitively fed into the white dominant society are distorted to falsely exalt whites and to falsely marginalize black people. The hypothesis behind this social engineering science is that if the information fed into a society can be controlled, then the society's collective beliefs, thoughts, and behaviors can also be controlled. by the information being fed into the society. The white society's core power over black people has always been its monopoly over information, and it has always deployed information warfare against black people. And to our detriment, most black people don't even know what information warfare is. Information warfare is the dissemination of propaganda in pursuit of a competitive, to gain a competitive advantage over an opponent or a targeted population. The white society systematically feeds false information into the society that are deliberately designed to create and sustain false perceptions within society of white superiority and black inferiority. These perceptions greatly aid the white society in maintaining its social dominance and social capital over black people. According to white social scientists, perception is more important than reality for shaping society and for controlling people. True power lies in only what's perceived as true, because people function based upon their perceptions of what's true rather than what actually is in fact true. The common public perceptions held within society are shaped by the narratives that are repetitively fed into a society. Therefore, all that's required for the distorting of the public perception is to repetitively feed false information into society. The public at large will then start functioning based upon their perceptions created by the false narratives rather than the true reality. Because the white ruling class controls all narratives that are fed into a society, they therefore literally owns the perception of reality. They've exploited this immense position of power by repetitively feeding false narratives into society that have distorted the public's perception of reality in ways that serve the system of white supremacy. They did this to, as I said before, to create and sustain false assumptions within society that aids them in maintaining their social dominance and social capital over black people. To meet this objective, they've whitewashed many facts. More specifically, they've literally taught us everything in reverse. This includes miseducating us to believe that it is we Africans that came from nothing. They do so by teaching us the lie that Africa was illiterate and uncivilized before the Europeans invaded, and therefore that we have no significant history. This is still being taught within our schools. No significant history that predates the European invasion of Africa. However, this is totally untrue. The hidden true historical facts are that Africans introduced science, writing, math, and philosophy to the world. The world's oldest university, library, manuscript, encyclopedia, human prosthetics, mathematical tools, medical journals are all located in Africa. The world's oldest standing kingdom is in Africa. Africans are the first to build in stone and to smelt metal. History's largest wall ever built is not the Great Wall of China. It's actually the Great Wall of Benin in Nigeria. It was 4 times larger than the Great Wall of China, and it was destroyed by the European powers. Africans also invented the wheel, paper, the calendar, the concept of 24 hours in a day, haircuts, 365-day calendar, leap year, organized labor, surgical instruments, cosmetics, the plow, the wheel, black ink pens, high heel shoes, condoms, hair wigs, hair dye, hair extensions, afro picks, hair brushes, levels, vase, Bretmans, the chisel, toothpaste, door locks, shaving, writing, astronomy, medicine, mathematics, paved roads, governments, clocks, both the sun clock and the water clock. And furthermore, long before the Europeans invaded Africa, it was Africans, when we call ourselves Moors, that civilized Europe. Africans introduced shaving, the use of toothpaste, perfume, fragrance oils, deodorants, and even introduced the daily bath to Europeans. The history we've been taught has been whitewashed in order to make Caucasians appear more significant throughout history than they truly in fact were, while falsely making we Africans appears as being the leeches of the world that haven't contributed much towards the building of society. Creating this public perception greatly aids the white society in maintaining a social capital and social dominance over black people. But the hidden reality is the exact opposite from what they've manipulated millions to believe. The truth is that in spite of cultural traumas wrought by the injustice of white racism and slavery, most inventions that have revolutionized the world were either in fact invented by black people or were directly inspired by early inventions by black people. Without black people, there would exist no internet, no cell phones. We wouldn't have cameras and microphones on our cell phones. We wouldn't have the accurate weather forecasting system. We wouldn't have the cataract laser removal scope. There would be no emails, no GPS, no hearing aids, no touch-tone phones, no caller IDs, no home surveillance security systems, no motorized vehicles, no steam engines, no traffic lights, no working light bulbs, no elevators, therefore no skyscrapers. There'll be no air conditioning. There'll be no modern color PC. We wouldn't have 3D movies. We wouldn't have central heatings. We wouldn't have refrigerators, helicopters, washing machine, lawnmowers, dryers. We wouldn't have the refrigerated truck that takes our groceries to the store. We wouldn't have blood banks, fiber optics, nanotechnology. We wouldn't have female sanitary pads, bathroom tissue holders, pencil sharpeners, etc., etc. The hidden fact is that most technologies that we routinely use every day came from the genius minds of black people. Black people have in fact enriched nearly every aspect of the lives of every person on this planet through our many inventions. I know. When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, the truth will seem absolutely ridiculous and its speaker a raving lunatic. Nonetheless, those who know the truth must teach. To create and sustain false public perceptions that aids in maintaining white social dominance over black people, the white society has literally taught us everything in reverse. In doing so, they've made the great historical achievements of Africans appear as belonging to that of Europeans. And they've made the historical failures of Europeans appear as belonging to we Africans. The nefarious practice is called Orwellian propaganda. It includes turning many black historical figures white and falsely giving their racial group credit for most achievements and inventions that were actually made by black people. The white society sits upon a throne of white exalting lies, while distorting most facts to make black people appear as being the leeches of society that haven't contributed much toward the building of society. This is the false narrative that our society functions based upon. This whitewashing of history provides the white society with a false historical platform that endorses their position of social dominance over black people. After all, they couldn't maintain their social dominance over black people while teaching the true history that it was African that civilized Europe. Although that narrative is the true one, to teach it would undermine the white society's current position of social dominance over black people. Therefore, they whitewashed history. And when I say that they've taught us everything in reverse, I do mean everything. They've also taught us the lies that they've also taught us lies to conceal the fact that the large recipient of welfare, the largest benefactors of affirmative action, and the group that actually commits most violent crimes are in fact Caucasians. Do your own research. Now, logically, many will now ask, how is it possible that Caucasians are the largest benefactors of affirmative action when it was created to provide a fair and even more balanced society for the minority groups? given white racism had always prevented it? The answer is actually quite simple. When they created the affirmative action program, they included white women to the list of minorities that are entitled to affirmative action. Yes, they made white women as minorities. And then they've awarded most of their benefits, affirmative action has gone to white women. Therefore, by extension, the white society has benefited most from affirmative action. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception. It has been distorted by a racist perception management system. Perception management is a propaganda technique that involves altering the public's perception of reality to suit the objective of the ruling class. It works by constantly and systematically feeding false information into the society. The public at large will then start functioning based upon the false information rather than the true reality. This is all possible because people are like computers. All you have to do is keep feeding them certain information every so often, and you persuade and steer an entire generation towards an implied objective. It's a well-proven social science. It doesn't matter if the information is untrue. Most people respond accordingly because they've all been given the same disinformation. It is an essential part of information warfare. This noted perception management system is designed to create and sustain false assumptions within the society that aids in maintaining white social dominance over black people. It's been ongoing for a very long time, being deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly and systematically falsely exalts the white brand and falsely marginalizes the black brand, thus creating the convincing but totally false perception that whites are inherently superior to blacks. Once this lie has been firmly embedded into the collective conscience of the masses, this then creates what's called an illusory truth effect that also aids in maintaining white social dominance over black people. The illusory truth effect is when people have been made to believe that false information is true by repeated exposure to the false information. They then begin functioning based upon the false information rather than the truth to the contrary. Because perception is more important than reality for controlling people and for shaping and steering society, therefore merely creating the false perception of white superiority over blacks is all that's required for maintaining white social dominance over black people. This perception directly affects hiring, firing, retention, and promotion practices in ways that aids in maintaining white social dominance over black people. I never said that what I teach will be easy for all to comprehend. I only said that it will be the black mental liberating truth, the truth that frees your mind from white mental slavery. The truth of our plight and condition. You know, white racism is now deployed with so much sophistication that when comparing it to the past blatant segregation tactics that our grandparents endured, one could say that the white racism today, the white racism of the past had a GED, while today's racism has a PhD. The white society developed a more sophisticated and covert methods for maintaining their social dominance over black people. Methods that are not easily recognized or comprehended by these black victims, because white racism always works best when the black victim doesn't understand how it works. Developing new ways to subjugate the oppressed is nothing new. Throughout history, those nations that were brutally racist and inhumanely oppressive rarely gave up their subjugation practices very easily. They most often reinvented them with much more sophistication, more consistent with the changing times. To the detriment of black people, this is our hidden reality. This is our hidden reality. The Caucasians' proclivity for racism and greed for power and for holding on to it is much too deeply ingrained for them to have abandoned their practices of subjugating black people. They've only brainwashed us to believe that to believe that they've changed. They continue to subjugate us because it's the people they are. It's the way they've always been, and it's the only way they know how to be. Welcome to the real world. This is our hidden reality. Although most black people do not experience the type of blatant white racism as our grandparents did, we are, however, still the victims of white racism. It's only now deployed with much more sophistication. We must elevate our minds to see it. They deliberately keep our minds dumbed down and distracted by biblical fairy tale and a silly slave syndrome myth. Therefore, we can't see what's being done to us. Brothers and sisters, it's time to wake up to the truth of our plight and condition. And I ask you to watch this video over and over until you understand it. And please share it, learn it, teach it. Because if our understanding of our plight and condition remains flawed, then all liberating remedies and strategies that stem from those misunderstandings will continue to be flawed. This is why we must gain a clear, concise, and accurate understanding of what's being deployed against us. The white society now deploys social sciences against us. Social science is a branch of science devoted to the study of human behavior, specifically how people interact with each other, behave, and develop as a culture and move forward as a society. It's how the ruling class steers society towards its objective. The term was formerly used to refer to the field of sociology, the original science of society established in the 19th century. It's now being used for maintaining white social dominance over black people. Using social sciences tactic provide the white society with a more sophisticated, more proficient and covert method used for controlling and subjugating black people, given that it's not easily recognized by black people. It is time to wake up to our reality. One love and peace.